So let's talk on a very interesting paper called the LH Surge and Ovulation. And this is an excellent paper which looked at the LH Surge and Ovulation revisited, a systematic review and a meta-analysis, and the implications for a true natural frozen embryo transfer. So based on that, they decided. So what is the importance of timing in a natural frozen embryo transfer? So what they've done is they've built up quite a good evidence-based study based on a modified natural cycle to understand the LH surge. So it is a way of doing a frozen transfer where you use a natural cycle because it has certain advantages over a hormone replacement therapy cycle. What are the challenges? The challenges are that you need to know when the LH surge occurs. And thus, knowing the LH surge is incredibly important. So successful implantation requires a receptive endometrium, and which is available during the window of implantation, and inaccurate timing can lead to asynchrony and thus reduce the chance of pregnancy. So thus pinpointing ovulation as a key reference point is extremely important. So let's start with defining what they defined as the LH surge. The onset of the LH surge is critical in predicting ovulation. However, a standardized definition is lacking in literature, leading to variations in clinical practice, and there's a lack of consensus which can impact the accuracy of a frozen embryo transfer in a natural cycle. So one is that we need a clear understanding and a definition of LH surge onset is crucial. What is the impact on the clinical practice? We'll say the impact is variations of LH surge definition can lead to inconsistencies in embryo transfer, potentially affecting implantation and pregnancy rates. So let's review this systematic review looked at the definition of LH surge, and they looked at how much should the LH increase. And several studies identified that the LH surge onset is an increase ranging from 1.8 to 6-fold from the baseline. However, the definition of baseline again varies across studies. There should be at least an increase of 2 to 3 standard deviations above the mean LH levels. And then there is an amplitude, and one study defines as the onset on the first day of LH levels exceeds 30% of the LH surge magnitude. So that's the difference between the baseline and the peak. And so if you have a look at the duration between LH surge and ovulation, initially we believed that's fixed, 36 hours. Where does that come from? That comes from the HCG trigger in IVF. But if you have a look at what evidence suggests is that the time interval ranges between 22 and 56 hours with a mean of 33.91 hours. Now, the LH surge onset begins marking the initiation of ovulatory response. Now, there is a variable duration. The time interval between LH surge and onset of ovulation varies significantly among women, ranging from 22 to 56 hours. Ovulation happens when a mature egg is released and it's ready to fertilization. So what are the implications of this time variation? One is that accurate timing, that is variation in duration, can lead to inaccuracies of the frozen embryo transfer. Personalized approach to a frozen embryo transfer, again, would be challenging, and you'll have to modify it accordingly. So for my LH surge profile, not all size fits. So LH surges are not uniform. They exhibit a variation in configuration, how they come up, amplitude, the level of which they rise, and the overall duration. And understanding this may be incredibly useful. So LH surge can present as a spike, either biphasic So a double peak or multiple peaks or a plateau pattern. Each configuration has implications in interpreting the LH level. So you can understand. So if you're going to see two rapid spikes coming up or multiple peaks or a plateau, the amplitude can also vary. Some studies suggest that a correlation between higher amplitude and better outcomes, but there has been no such studies which will be able to confirm it. And finally, we look at the, the duration of ovulation, and the duration of LH surge from the onset of baseline levels can vary. The longer surges may be associated with higher pregnancy rates, but more research is needed. How do you test it? You can either do urine testing, convenient, dependent on which assay you use, and LH components they measure. May show LH surges even without ovulation, to a certain extent like premature LH surges. Serum LH testing provides a direct measurement of LH levels in blood, less convenient and requires blood to be drawn, and it's a gold standard. Now, where's the difference? And there's some studies which say that between the urine and the blood LH levels, there seems to be around anything between 18 to 20-hour lag, and blood LH level testing is probably more accurate. Ultrasound, again, it may provide a very direct way of confirming ovulation, but not of LH surge. So you could have a direct visualization of the follicle, more accurate in predicting ovulation compared to LH surge. But it doesn't tell us if LH surge has occurred. So using ovulation to plan a frozen transfer is phenomenally challenging. So what are the ultrasound signs of ovulation? A follicular collapse. You see disappearance of follicles, sudden decrease in size, or replacement with a spongy appearance, increase echogenicity, the follicle appears more bright, but that's not a sign alone. It may have irregular walls of the follicle, and they become irregular and free fluid in the pelvis. So if you look at another challenge that comes up is a luteinized unruptured follicle. So what is a luteinized unruptured follicle? Is where follicle undergoes luteinization, forms a corpus luteum, but fails to rupture and release the egg. So while you'll be able to see a normal LH surge and rising progesterone levels, it's all going to be suboptimal. And the luteinized unruptured follicle presents a challenge. It has a blunted LH surge and a low mid-luteal progesterone compared to a normal ovulatory cycle. What is the impact of fertility? LUF can contribute to infertility as ovulation does not occur, even though a hormonal profile may suggest something different. So if you look at overall using it for a frozen embryo transfer, an LH surge is detected. The LH surge prompts the preparation for a frozen transfer. A luteinized unruptured follicle occurs without releasing of an egg, and a frozen transfer is inaccurately planned, and you have a lower progesterone level. So that is something you need to be concerned about. If you look at the window of implantation, it's a limited time frame in which the endometrium is receptive to embryo implantation. It typically occurs in the mid-luteal phase, around 8 to 10 days after ovulation. The optimal timing is necessary to transfer the embryos, and there's a complex interplay of hormones during this time, which will prepare the endometrium for implantation. So what affects the window of implantation? Several factors, but we think that there's an individual variation from women to women. As women get older, they may have a shift or shortening of the implantation window, and an adequate endometrial lining is needed for an optimum implantation window. So if you have a thin endometrium, again, you seem to affect the implantation window. Now, in the implantation window in a natural cycle, and there's where it comes with challenges. It's guided by the LH surge and ovulation, making accurate assessment of implantation window essential. The challenges are that the variability of LH surge, ovulation duration, and the potential of luteinized unruptured follicle challenges for precise assessment of the window of ovulation is difficult. So you can understand that if you're doing a completely natural frozen embryo replacement, you just don't know when the LH surge has occurred. Try and use the same assessment in this paper in Nature, and it's difficult to know when the LH surge is occurring because you're not going to see. You're going to see. You just don't know whether it's going to be a multiple spike, one spike, whether the amplitude is prolonged over 48 hours, and so you don't know. Current practice is days 0 of LH surge, and then you have 6 days later an embryo transfer that is done. What are the limitations? There's a lack of ovulation that has not been confirmed, and there are individual variations depending on when the LH surge may occur. So the reason I think it's a very good paper is that it questions our understanding of the LH surge. It's not a one-all that fits. We know that the LH surge varies. It varies in the way it starts, either with a spike or multiple spike. Its amplitude, it may go on for, we think between 48 hours, but that can vary. And so beyond the LH surge, we'll need to understand this better, try and use this to improve how we perform a frozen embryo transfers. From a Nature's point of view, I'll say it throws the ball back into research court that we just don't know exactly how to predict and what's the timing from the LH surge to ovulation. So in Nature, what I would suggest is if you start seeing the first sign of a rising LH surge, start trying for a pregnancy. Thank you.